first ever Thrash Trash video podcast. I am Jack Trash. Here in FLA, out in LA is Thrash Pie.
Right. What's up, man? How are you? Good morning.
Good morning to you. And joining us today is K-Rock from Scream Guitars.
Happy to be here.
He's got Scream Guitars. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. Great guitars. There's going to be a Jack Trash, the Riff guitar very soon. You're going to see it on this.
Very special.
It's a good one. It's a very good one.
Oh, nice. That'll be very good.
So what we've decided to do for the very first one, we're trying to figure out a good subject for this first Thrash Trash video podcast. And with the passing of Malcolm Young, in speaking with the two of you separately, we all seem to have great first-time hearing AC/DC stories. So we'll start with you, Thrasher.
Okay. First of all, we're talking late 70s, and I was just getting into professional radio. I'd done college radio for 2 or 3 years, and a whole bunch of different genres, but rock mostly. So you have to understand that we're in the kind of era that, there's the Jackson Browne that's real popular. Eagles are huge. Also, the progressive rock stuff, and a lot of sickening Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Styx and, all the kind of stuff that was just, they're shoving down your throat on album rock radio. And so all of a sudden here comes, wow, AC/DC. There's a little guy wearing shorts and, from Australia. They're doing this schoolboy thing and, they're snarling and screaming and it's real basic chord hardcore rock and roll music. It was sort of back to basics a lot. And in the midst of all of that prog rock, it was interesting how it got popular real quick, especially with the younger group of people that were coming along and just starting to get into, hard rock, because they weren't calling AC/DC heavy metal, they were just calling it hard rock, and they were adding it and they were playing it. So the first thing that I heard was Let There Be Rock, obviously.
It's a great song.
Absolutely great song. In fact, there was just a video of it from some television show, I think an Australian show, floating around on Facebook. So that was the first, experience with it, and it was a little upsetting because here we were, with the laid back, hey man, listen to my music and really understand what a wonderful musician I am. And then this comes along, and these guys are tearing up the stage, and not quite smashing guitars, but it was very cool. It was a good experience, and I felt a great relief because we just needed to leave that whole 70s observe marvelous musicians and worship kind of era. So it was cool. It was a fun thing for me. They just threw everything out the window and went for it. It was awesome.
Nice. Very, very nice. The nice part about this, too, is that our three stories are all completely different. So K-Rock, your story, the first time you heard AC/DC?
Yeah, mine is going to be Back in Black, actually. And there's a fun story here. And Jack and I have spoken before about certain albums in our lifetimes that the first time you heard it, it was a life-changing moment. You remember exactly where you were, and you remember the vibe and the feeling. And I can get into that a whole other podcast, but in regards to Back in Black, I never forget this. It came out in 1980, and I was, I think, a freshman or a sophomore in high school. I was about 15 years old. And my girlfriend and I, at the time, were at a high school party, and I wanted to spend some quality alone time with her, so I borrowed a friend's car keys so we could specifically sit in the car, and enjoy ourselves, have a little alone time. And I figured while we were sitting there, well, why don't I put the key in the ignition and turn on the radio, put on the cassette. He had a cassette that was sticking out of his cassette player. Again, this is 1980, so I remember those days, right? So I turn on the car, and at least the electric part, and I put in the cassette, and we're in the backseat getting comfortable, and all of a sudden, I started hearing this album that I knew nothing about. In fact, I didn't even know about AC/DC, to be honest with you. Because I didn't own a car at the time, I wasn't listening to radio. And I was very much into albums and rock and listening to things on the stereo at home. So I didn't really have a lot of exposure to the radio, so I knew nothing of AC/DC. I think at the time, if my memory serves me right, I think You Shook Me All Night Long was the first single that was on the radio back then. But so I hadn't even heard that. So here I am. For some reason, I guess he must have had side 2 on. So my first exposure was Back in Black. And we're in the back seat, and I'm listening to this with her. And I remember saying to her, what is this? Who is this music? What is it? I never heard this before. Then You Shook Me All Night Long came on. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is one of the greatest rock and roll songs I ever heard. I was getting really excited. And it wasn't just because I was with my girlfriend at the time. I heard something that was, to me, was just through the roof. So by the time that we were ready to move on and go back to the party, and I had to bring the keys back to my friend to thank him for letting me use his car, I had the cassette with me, and I showed it to him. I go, who is this? I go, where did you get this? I'm like, what is this? And he explained to me it's some new band named AC/DC, which isn't true because we all know that AC/DC had been out for a while, but it was new to us, it was new to us. And I never forget how excited I was when I heard that. And I went out the next day and I bought it myself. And I listened to it over and over.
It's interesting, Back in Black, K-Rock, that would have been the introductory album for most of the world about AC/DC. It's an awesome record.
The first time that I ever heard AC/DC was February 22nd, 1980.
Wow.
How do you know that? The reason that I know the date is because I was going to be spending the night with a buddy of mine, Dave Bunsen, who's actually a consultant on the Riff. He's helped me out a lot. He's become very big in the movie world. And I was going to stay the night at his house. We were outside in the front yard. We had a couple of sticks and a ball playing a little street hockey. And these 2 older kids in high school came up and wanted to, just play with us, I guess. And they had sticks and balls, but they also had a portable radio. A boombox. And for whatever reason, they had the record, too. I don't know why. But they were playing the tape of Highway to Hell. And I remember looking at the record album and seeing Angus with the horns and all that going, oh my God, this is a little weird. But as we were playing around and I'm listening to it, I'm like, wow, this is really good. I like this. And again, a reason that I know it was February 22nd, 1980 was because that night we went into the house and we turned the TV on at 8 o'clock. It wasn't shown live back then, but it was the United States hockey team beating the Russian team in the Lake Placid Olympics.
I remember that.
It's kind of a day where if you were around then, you know exactly what you were doing that day. Not only did I watch the Americans beat the Russians in hockey, but I also heard AC/DC for the first time.
It's a good one too.
It's not too bad.
Wow, that's an awesome night. I remember that night. I was a bartender in school. Wow, that's awesome, Jack. Yeah.
And that's going to conclude the first Thrash Trash video podcast. When's the next time the Metal Storm can be heard?
Yeah, I do 2 hours of metal. I pick, I call it classic metal. I hate to use the word classic because it reminds me of classic rock radio stations, which, people start going to sleep. But so I'm doing that at least once a month. It's 2 hours. I pick them, I play them, no commercials. I blast straight through, and it's streamed at laradiostudio.com. Hopefully soon to be heard on some terrestrial radio stations, but we'll make all that happen when you get the Riff going. Know what I'm saying? So, a lot of fun there. I still do some podcasts from time to time, and in development, a documentary film about KNAC FM, which I think is an historic little radio station, and moved heavy metal and pop metal and LA glam metal forward, like no other vehicle really. So, and radio as I see it, it's going to be slipping off the edge of the earth here pretty soon. We need to get these things documented and archived so that they'll at least be in existence, in documentary film form. It's an educational thing that I'm doing. So, there we are.
And also, K-Rock, you've got Scream Guitars. Where can people check out Scream Guitars?
ScreamGuitars.com, and we're also on Facebook and all the other social sites.
So make sure you check them out. The first episode of The Riff just ran yesterday. We've got a new episode that features Cher Ross from Vixen that's coming up on Friday. Thanks to everybody who has checked it out. I really do appreciate it. These are just going to get bigger and better. So stick around. Check us out on YouTube, The Riff YouTube channel, where you're going to be able to see all these video podcasts, plus, of course, the Riff shows. Until next time, peace.